Now, like I said, not everybody has been a great fan of this situation specifically. Talking about Argentina, let's talk about Agustin Pichot. And Agustin Pichot definitely has been one of the biggest rippers of this. And he actually came out, there was an article about him that just came out earlier this week. It was written in the what was the was it, I think, the Guardian. It was written in the Guardian and uh was written by I'm sorry, this it was written on the Daily Mail, and it was written by Chris Foy and Nick Simon. Now, if you guys don't know Agustin Pichot, as I spoke before, he's a former Argentina rugby player. He played for the national team in 2007 whenever they made it to the semifinals, ultimately, I think, losing to France in that one. And he has been a massive voice and a massive leader in the Americas, particularly in South America. He was one of the prominent leaders in World Rugby for a while, kind of like waiting and biding his time, trying to be the young voice in the old room. And he was one who had a lot of progressive ideas of where World Rugby really should go with rugby in the world. One of the things, whenever 2020 came, whenever Alan Gilpin, no, whenever not Bill Beaumont, trying to get the names so I can make sure I give it to you guys correct. Man, he moved over to the NFL Europe, basically. But whenever the former chairman for World Rugby stepped down and became the new head for NFL Europe, Bill Beaumont and Agustin Pichot ran in terms of for the chairman for World Rugby. Pichot was expected to really make a serious run. Bill Beaumont kind of is the old boys club. He was an incumbent, ironically, in the sense of the fact that, in the sense that, he's been there for ever and a day. I mean, that man is old. I mean, that man, that man is old. But again, the old boys club definitely stands strong. Brett Gosper, that was who was the former chairman for World Rugby. Whenever Brett Gosper stepped down, Agustin Pichot definitely tried to get a stand-in and ended up losing. And it's one thing, boy, this man talked because he's been quiet for 3 years. He said in the article, man, I tried to come and help, but Six Nations blocked me, calling every union, especially Alan Gilpin, who is now the World Rugby's chief executive, JJ John Jeffries, the favorite to replace Beaumont as the World Rugby chairman when his old self steps down, because they are threatened. They were threatened by Pichot, as he claims. One thing he said is, like, in the voting process, I would never phone Fiji and trade for votes. Pichot said, I could have won the election, believe me, but I wouldn't go the extra step because rugby is a special thing for me. And if I betray that, I lose respect. And that is what I have in rugby. I think people respect me for that. And look, again, politics plays into all of this. But when it comes to this open space, man, this isn't something that's been unusually said. This isn't a new thing that's been talked about when it goes to, is World Rugby regressing because people don't like it? Is it regressing because of old ideas? Or is it regressing because it's not allowing itself to progress? It's not allowing itself to evolve or push out those who have been typically in those positions of power? And is there a fear that they're going to lose if they do? Because, I mean, think about it. Like, if you are, France or England, and you've put in millions and billions, and you see a nation like Fiji come in, not only does it strip you of your best players, but they come in and beat you, or God forbid, a Portugal comes in and takes you out. Now your professional leagues now have a different shift to it. The amount of money that you have going to it, and of course, the history. We're talking about almost 200 years of rugby, and the history of it being very, very consistent with who's been at the top almost forever. Like, it literally hasn't even changed in the last 80 years at minimum. That speaks volumes. So what Pichot is saying in terms of the growth of the blockage is kind of a major deal in the way that we can see where rugby is going with it. Of course, then we also want to speak he also talks about the fact that the system is done to protect the core. They have seen bigger is better, but they won't take the risk. But they are already at risk. They are in the red. It has to be a discussion of taking risks for bigger visions. I think 2020 really spoke a lot to what was going on with World Rugby. I think obviously the pandemic exposed a lot of people's finances at the corporate level. We saw things like Australia really take a big, big hit on it. Obviously RFU, the richest and biggest rugby union, quote, take a biggest hit. And obviously these other ones did, where now you've seen bigger investments by private equity. For example, Silverleaf investing into All Blacks. You have the investment in the Six Nations, CVC investing into Six Nations, just more, and even seeing other American companies investing in these rugby properties because they just weren't able to hold the finances well enough to be able to hold it. So everybody's now in this rush for distribution. One thing that was said, and from another show, which was on the Rugby Wrap Up, on the Rugby Odd Show, the Rugby Wrap Up with my guy Matt McCarthy, the champ John Layfield, and of course we have the great goodness, it's always so bad whenever you forget stupid names just as quickly as any. Dude, I have a terrible memory. I just want to say I got a terrible memory. But we were definitely talking with Irish commentator and former coach it's so bad. That's so bad that the name has literally slipped my mind. Oh man, this is a bad look. This is a bad look. Give me 1 second, guys. Give me 1 second while I get this name searched up, because this is what we do. This is what I do. With George Hook. And George Hook really said something that was really profound to me. Not profound, but very obvious. And that was that rugby is not a viewer sport. It's an active sport. And a lot of the death knell that seems to be coming with rugby is that it's trying to be a viewer sport in an active sport situation. And so the look at commercialization seems to actually be denigrating the growth that it's doing, which I think it's something to be said. Now, I'm still a capitalist, and I still believe that rugby needs to focus on its financial future, but it does make sense as to why it might not be the views that World Rugby is going for, which is make as many games as possible, try and sell it to media distributors, and be able to get that quick buck and see if we can do it. Basically trying to do a quick NFL system. It doesn't work because a lot of the games that they're played, one, they don't have much storyline leading into it. Number two, They are a lot of the people who would be watching might be playing during those games, so you have lower viewership. And three, again, you're not activating the base; you're simply trying to work the top. You're simply trying to work the top of the totem pole, and that's not the place that is going to be where the growth is going to come out the heaviest. And again, it speaks again when it comes to Pichot, and then the president for South American Rugby, Sebastian Pinarua. He said it's a death of rugby. He says the Nations League concept, the Nations Cup concept, it will kill rugby because it'll be impossible to compete with those teams in 4 to 5 years. They're going to go up and the others will go down again because you're not dealing with what the actual issue truly is. So that's my thoughts on it. I don't know if I'm 100% with Pichot on everything, but I think he's definitely in the right direction. And I do think that different leadership has to be made. Pichot said he's not going to run again, but he does want to absolutely focus on being able to grow populations in places like Brazil, in China, in Japan, in South America, Uruguay, where you actually have places where population growth can go, because New Zealand capped out. England, I think from a cultural standpoint, capped out. Even South Africa, capped out. And you see it in the media rights deals, capped. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go about trying to figure this, because I don't know if I truly believe that tier 2 nations actually need the tier 1s. I would like to, if it was up to me, I would love to be able to see a situation where the tier 2 nations ice out tier 1s, focus on developing in the youth element, and just become more marketable and more powerful in terms of their player entry points. Because the tier 2 nations, ironically, are the nations that have probably the highest level of athletes. Obviously, USA is number one. China, while it may not have the athletes, they have the numbers and they have the resources, which speaks to Hong Kong, which is one of the richest rugby unions in the world, needs to be there. Nigeria is another one that has massive population, massive youth population. Even though soccer is going to be number one forever and ever, it has massive potential in terms of growth and viewership. India, another place that is very underrated in terms of athleticism for rugby, and obviously it's been growing there. Brazil, another place, massive population, massive financial possibility, and massive capability of actually shifting and developing the game in a major way. I'm here in Brazil, and I know this firsthand. And obviously they're working with Japan, so that's at least a plus. Singapore, while it's not a population hub, definitely has the finances to be able to maintain a lot of that. I'd love to be able to see more out of the Middle East. Obviously, Dubai has a tournament, but if you're gonna get all this this public investment fund (PIF) money, like, you need to at least get it in, have rugby teams be coming out of there to make it worth their while. Because if Dubai Sevens alone isn't making either Qatar International Fund or the Dubai International Fund or Saudi International Fund want to invest more into rugby, that's a serious problem. And of course, we talk about the Israel and Palestine situation, but that's a different situation, different topic. I'm not going to go into that, but it does speak a lot to how do you grow the game correctly, especially when you want to talk from the top and you want to talk from places that can keep you funded much longer, much better going forward. And so let me know what your thoughts are on all these topics are. Last one in terms of this, and before I move on to the next thing, is expansion of the Rugby World Cup. I think we talked about it. It officially got made. Rugby World Cup men's is going to be moving, or just Rugby World Cup 2027 on the men's side is going to be moving from 20 teams to 24 teams. And then for the women, it's going to be moving from 12 teams to 16 teams overall. What can you say on that one? I mean, again, pool play wasn't great, but if you're using the Nations Cup as a guiding system, maybe it can increase. But again, 2027 and 2031, it's to be determined, since no tier 2 teams will play a tier 1 nation in that 6-year period. So iron's not necessarily going to be sharpened over here. For the women's side, I think WXV actually is a legitimate benefit. And the 4 years that it's not going to be in relegation is going to be fine, because the teams that are into WXV2 and WXV3 have also kind of been WXV1 teams in some cases. I'm taking like Ireland, Italy, Scotland. Like, those are games, so you're getting at least some level of a rub. Like, the women's side is getting a much better game, and they deserve it. But it's so funny that everybody can make sense on the women's side, but the men's side is not going all the way through. But yo, let me know what your thoughts are. What do you think about the expansion? What do you think about this Nations Cup change? I'm totally mixed. I love it I think it's okay from a business standpoint. I do like the fact of more games being played, but I don't care for the fact that we're not going to be able to see evolution and be able to test to see if the amount of games played actually makes a difference to the amount of competition against a tier one, until we get to the Rugby World Cup and then see what happens from there. So, but hey, let's build up our youth side. Like I said, tier 2 should be building up their youth side far superior to what any tier 1, because tier 1 is old and legitimately dying off outside of Fiji and Japan. But New Zealand might be there forever. South Africa might be there. Australia, downsliding. RFU, downsliding. France is, it's over here and there. Italy is super downsliding. Like, those areas are aging themselves out. So tier 2 has a chance to jump them, even if they don't get to compete with them. All right, y'all. Let's get a commercial break. I need to drink some water because my throat is dead, and we'll be right back.
I ain't convinced. Ride around in the city. Black out the tents. Gassed up, they gon' let me fill up the tank.